Okay, so this is just preposterous, all right? So EB makes surprising pivot on BC real estate investors. At a realtor event, Premier hints at new policies to support landlords and developers, and I knew this was coming because they have shifted way far one way. So, investors who buy and sell real estate for profit in British Columbia are actually useful to the economy and the housing sector. Wow, right? How long have people in real estate been saying this for? Well, the rhetoric out there is, housing is an unproductive asset and we don't need real estate investors and we should abolish real estate investing and you should only be allowed to own one house and all these things, right? Except now when the problems actually start surfacing from all of these rules that restrict investment, now suddenly we like investors again, right? Now, there's something you wouldn't expect Premier David Eby to say, considering he's waged a 7-year war in government against speculators and those who seek to flip homes to make money. But not only this, also people who just want to invest and rent out a property, right? Not because flipping and speculation are different from somebody just buying a house and renting it out. Those are 3 different types of investors, I guess, right? And yet, that's pretty much what the Premier told a crowd of realtors at the BC Real Estate Association in Victoria on Tuesday. In the process, he revealed his intention to try and harness that investor spirit, previously viewed by New Democrats as unfettered capitalistic greed to boost his housing affordability goals. The shadow side of the work that we've done to address investment housing is a lot of the existing real estate model around pre-sales, and everything else was built around the idea that people were buying pre-sales and flipping them, for example, as well as other kind of links between investors and actually building housing. And so one of the things we're looking at is how do we harness that energy around investment, especially at a time when we're looking for investment in the province and the interest in investment going into housing and real estate, and do it in a way that facilitates access to more housing for people. The Premier said he's actively working on such a program behind the scenes to channel people's desire to make money buying and selling properties into a more constructive mechanism for government. So this is a complete 180 from everything we've been hearing out of the NDP government for years now. They have done everything in their power to completely squash investment in real estate, and now they're saying we need the investors, and we're actually going to put in regulations to help investors, right? It's unclear how any new government program on housing investment would align with the NDP's 2-year anti-flipping tax, which also applies to pre-sale contracts and came into effect January 1st. Eby also pledged to the real estate crowd that he would boost protections for landlords, right? Dude, I knew that was going to happen. It had to happen at some point because it's gotten too ridiculous, right? You guys have seen me make videos on this. The fact that somebody can rent your house, pay nothing, takes like 6 months to get them out of there, and in the process of them living there, they can just trash your house. And like, as a landlord, you have pretty much no recourse for getting any of that money back, right? Like, that's that should never happen. That is crazy, right? Like, I talked about how in any other realm of life, you would be charged with a crime for doing something like that, right? Like vandalism or something. But in real estate, you can just do that and nothing happens. Another sentence you would not typically associate with an NDP government that has been primarily focused for the last 7 years on boosting renters' rights and making it harder to evict tenants. Eby highlighted small-scale landlords, primarily families who invest in multiple homes and want to rent them out. The idea seemed to lap into the hesitancy some investors feel in becoming long-term landlords, now that Eby government has severely restricted their ability to operate short-term rentals on sites like Airbnb. So now he's saying, I don't have the details I can show you right now, but we're also looking at how do we support smaller investors that might buy their own condo and then rent it out as a private landlord. And I have an idea here, right? Now, first off, I want to say, I don't know David Eby. I've never talked to him. I'm sure he's a nice guy, right? Because I have people that make hit videos on me and say stuff about me, but I've never met them and I've never talked to them. And I'm sure if they talk to me in real life, they'd see that I'm a pretty decent guy, right? And I'm sure David Eby's exactly the same, right? So I'm not attacking his personal character, but pretty much all the rules that the NDP has put in are stupid. And if they just removed most of those rules, it would become a much more positive environment for landlords, right? Like flipping tax, assignment tax, speculation tax, raising the notice to evict a tenant to 3 months, the tenant rights, and, the 15 other taxes that they put in, flipping tax and whatever else. There's like 15 of them, right? If they just started getting rid of those, that would make it a lot more attractive. Rent control. That would make it a lot more attractive for people to actually invest in real estate. And I think the reason why they're starting to talk about this, like, listen, anybody in the industry actually, in real estate at some capacity knew that this conversation was going to come up at some point, because you can't go all the way one side for that long without having some serious repercussions. So I think the reason why they're talking about this finally is because there's a few reasons. So number one, housing starts have completely crashed. Like pretty much nothing's getting built. And come 2028, we're going to have basically no new supply coming online. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, in the next 12 to 18 months, the construction industry could very well be a disaster, right? Because come 2026, early 2026, when a lot of these pre-sales that were sold in 2022, 2021 are finished, those construction workers may not have another job to go to because nothing else has been launched, therefore nothing else will be getting built. And three, the BC government collects a lot of tax from new housing getting built. And when new houses get built and people move in, there's property taxes and GST and PTT and not all of that goes to the BC government, but there's a lot of tax that they're missing out on by new homes not getting built or purchased. So here we are, it's screw all the landlords until we realize that we actually need the landlords. And it is somewhat of a productive asset because like one of the best things that could happen to the Canadian economy is a house getting built, right? Because when a house gets built, it's more housing, but you also there's a lot of taxes that get collected, and then you employ all the trades workers, the companies that supply the materials, the flooring, the paint, the appliances, the lawyers, the mortgage brokers, the real estate agents, think about all the industries that make money and get employment from a house being built. And when an investor, the only way those homes get built is when people actually invest in the projects. They buy a pre-sale. So now we don't have any of that, right? And this could be a huge drag on the economy in the next, maybe 12 to 18 months when, construction dramatically slows. And I think a big problem here, because, we've already seen a lot of rules get brought in that instantly got reversed because they're just dumb or they do absolutely nothing, right? What's a good example of this? The rescission period for real estate, how there's a 3-day cooling off period when you buy a property now. I don't know a single realtor who's used this since it's been put in place, right? When they increased the notice to evict a tenant to 4 months and then instantly had to roll it back 2 weeks later. This is happening because you have a bunch of people who are not in real estate, that don't transact real estate, that are just not involved with it to any capacity, making the rules. Right? It's okay, let's talk about basketball. It's like somebody who doesn't watch basketball, who doesn't understand basketball, who somebody comes and tells them hey man, there's way too many fouls happening in basketball. We need to get the amount of fouls down because it's really slowing the game pace. Okay, well, the defense is probably being too rough because there's too many fouls. So instead of having them foul out at 5, let's disincentivize them to play rough and let's make them foul out at 2, and that should get rid of the amount of fouls that's happening. Well, in reality, the problem is actually it's too easy to foul people, right? Because you can just bait somebody and get fouled. And the result is every single good player on both teams will foul out by the second quarter, and you're gonna have nobody playing basketball in the second half of the game. And this happens because the people making the rules don't actually watch basketball. But anyways, this is just the latest thing here. It is nice to finally see a sentiment shift in this because we desperately need it over here. And again, this is not a personal attack at anybody in government who is making the rules. Like I said, I'm sure they are nice guys. I'm sure if I talk to them in person, they'd be nice people, right? But at the same time, I am going to critique the politics because, I've been pretty vocal about a lot of these rules and how I think they won't work and how I think they will be eventually disastrous and harmful for everybody in the long run. And it seems like that's about to play out right in front of our eyes, and they're going to have to step back and reverse a lot of the things that they have done. Now, if you want to chat with me about buying or selling in the Fraser Valley, link in the description. Otherwise, subscribe. I'm that Agent Kelly. I'm making moves to move you. Peace.